everyone. I'd like to call to order the work session for August 27th at 5 p.m. And our first item is to conduct a presentation for the proposed downtown streetscape master plan. Aaron and Aaron.
Yes. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. We are pleased to present the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan for discussion this evening. This project is identified as an immediate goal or a priority project within the Downtown Action Plan and represents a foundation and path forward for the revitalization of downtown Pflugerville. We have developed this plan in collaboration with Half Associates, and they are here this evening to present to you the vision, the findings, and recommendations included within the plan. Go ahead and hand this off to Aaron Cooper with Half Associates.
Thank you. Aaron?
Thank you, Aaron. Mayor, council, thank you for having me this evening. I'm looking forward to just talking about this with you all. Let's see if I can get this presentation started.
It hates you.
Great, thank you.
All right. So let's see. So the purpose of this project was to look at all of downtown Pflugerville, all of the 4 core districts, as well as some of the key corridors through downtown Pflugerville. Those key corridors are Pecan Street, Railroad, and also Main Street. So really what we wanted to do was to create a cohesive environment that included pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, landscaping, lighting, all of those elements and materials that help create a downtown district. We're not working in the dark here. We are referencing previous plans and studies that have been conducted in Pflugerville. So we took those into account at the very beginning of the project, so we understood all the previous studies that have been done for downtown. We also engaged the community throughout this process. We did have 2 stakeholder meetings as well as 2 open houses, and we even had a pop-up event at Deutschenfest that I recall seeing some of you at. We also had an online survey. With that, we had over 3,500 data points that were collected. We reached over 300 individuals and residents in Pflugerville, and then we also had 179 individual written comments that pertained to what residents preferred to see. Those 179 results are survey results on the online survey. I wanted to point out a couple key items here is that ranking some of the projects in level of importance. Pecan Street is number 1. For pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, and parking, the number 1 there is pedestrians. And then for parking, people greatly preferred head-in angled parking as opposed to any other orientation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but your graphs are off a little bit there. Back up a little, one, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Parking is 20%, but on the graph it looks smaller than the 11% bicycle
I believe those might be
facilities.
switched.
And parallel parking is 17%, but on the graph it looks smaller than your 15% perpendicular. What's the explanation there? Are the numbers transposed, or
the numbers
graph
came
is wrong?
second, so the graph is correct and the colors would be correct.
It almost looks.
So the numbers are backwards?
Yes, sir.
Well, but
So
I mean, that
parking
doesn't.
should be 11%, bicycle facilities should be 20%?
Correct.
And parallel is 17%? Or is
Or 15.
actually 15%, and perpendicular is actually 17%?
That is correct.
Okay. Good catch.
Yeah,
We'll have that fixed.
the scale just looks off on all the graphs. 15% compared to 64%.
Yes, yeah, that's also true.
It shouldn't be
64
2/3 of the
should
way
be
up.
6 times as big
Yeah.
as,
I don't know. Maybe it's
4 times.
logarithmic.
I'm sorry, 69% should be 6 times as big as bicycle facilities, right?
But the percentages are
Definitely not.
correct. Is that right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, they're on the wrong color category.
Yeah, that's fine. Tomato, tomato.
We'll fix that.
It's important. Yeah, we will correct that. So some of the streetscape elements that we were getting feedback from the public include outdoor gathering spaces, gateway signage, lighting, public art, wayfinding. Again, all of these key features that create a downtown environment. In general, we're going to show you a lot of different cross sections this evening, and generally, what you're going to see is the inclusion of shared use paths, which are paths that are intended for both pedestrians and bicycles. You're going to see a lot of street trees, and then you're also going to see a narrowing of travel lanes. And in general, this is going to create a better pedestrian and bicycle environment while still allowing appropriate vehicle travel. So let's start out with Pecan Street. We have it is divided into 4 different sections. Those sections correspond to available right-of-way. All of Pecan sees over 15,000 vehicles per day. It is the primary east and west corridor through downtown Pflugerville. The right-of-way varies anywhere from 50 to 120 feet in width. And this is TxDOT owned and operated. So as such, any recommendations you're going to see this evening do meet TxDOT design criteria. So this is the first section. Again, you've got wide vehicle lanes. You're going to see a lot of that. Wide vehicle lanes, lack of pedestrian and bicycle features, and lack of shade trees. So we do have 2 alternatives we're proposing for this first section. They both have 11-foot travel lanes and a 12-foot shared lane. That is the existing condition today. But we have very wide shoulders that we want to take advantage of. We can include 10-foot wide shared use paths in those that are separated from the vehicle right-of-way by wide landscape medians, include shade trees. The difference between these 2 alternatives that you're seeing is that the one on the left has a 4-foot wide landscape buffer between adjacent properties and the shared use paths, whereas the one on the right has an 11-foot buffer. So what that is doing is the smaller, so the one on the left, which has 4 feet, it would allow for public utilities to be moved underground to accommodate the underground utilities. That wider one on the right would be able to accommodate shade trees if the utilities could not be accommodated in the public utility easement.
Is there an idea of like a sidewalk cafe area? Is that also included in that 11-foot landscape buffer?
That is not included in this.
No,
No.
so that wouldn't be, that's not part of the intention.
Correct.
Shared use path, I'm assuming that's pedestrian and bicycle?
Yes, sir.
And why did we opt to put the bicycles on the pedestrian path as opposed to one of those cool, what do you call it, little collapsible barricade things? They're not bollards, they're, I forget what they are. The little reflective posts that you put there to demark a bike lane that we looked at last time.
Placing the bicycles on the street.
On the street,
travel.
right.
So we did this because the limited right-of-way that you see throughout the rest of Pecan Street does require that we have combined pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So we wanted to create consistency throughout all 4 sections.
Also, I don't know, you spent a lot of time up on, in front of the HEB in Ramrock, just north of here, but people run over those things all the time.
They're designed
They
that
are
way.
constantly being destroyed, and they don't really control traffic.
And
People will just run over them because they know that they will.
In the instance of a bike lane, I don't think they're actually meant to be to control traffic. What they do is if you're a distracted driver that's on your phone and you start hearing a whack, 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 then you'll correct your car as opposed to running over a bicyclist.
Now, but frankly, the cyclists I know, they don't like dedicated bike lanes because it accumulates debris. And if we have those temporary bollards, whatever they are, you can't really get a street sweeper in there. So you end up with a lot of debris in an area where cyclists can no longer ride because it's obstructed.
Sounds like we need an adopt a bike lane program to reach out to our nonprofits to service
Potentially. My question would be on the shared use path if we would have what I'm going to call the European style where you got a painted red section and a non-painted section where people, when you're walking in the red section, you hear a lot of bells behind you because the bicycles are trying to get through. With kind of a dedicated, although not segregated, bicycle path.
That is a potential. These are intended to be bidirectional, but we could provide some sort of design use in those shared use paths.
You said alternative A allows for underground utilities.
It does in that 4 foot area on the
4
the outside
foot,
edge.
but so alternative B would not allow it for it because we would have trees there.
Correct, and those could be handled within the public utility easement on adjacent parcels. So if additional space was required for utilities, you could use that 4 foot within the right of way.
And there's no concern excavating 4 foot away from a 0 foot setback with a building right there?
So any existing buildings are much, much further away from the edge of property line, and any future development would have required setbacks as well.
So in this particular area of Pecan, we do have a substantial public utility easement in that area. So the idea behind the preferred alternative A is that it gives enough planting space for mature trees, provides for more space for maintenance, and it gets those trees a little bit further away from travel lanes. And so you'll see the 4 foot kind of buffer just providing for additional area for needing to excavate for the undergrounding of overhead lines.
It shows it very well. The only thing that I think is lacking from that, both of these diagrams would be the whatever setback there is for the buildings. Is there a 10 foot setback, 15 foot, 5, 0, whatever? That would help in terms of determining whether or not A is appropriate or not.
So along Pecan, I can't answer that. It is at least 25 feet along
25 feet.
Pecan.
Beautiful.
But it's because of further down Pecan Street where we have physical right-of-way constraints.
Right. Cool.
But we can take a look at that. There's probably going to be different ones in
Probably
each section.
varies when you get to the downtown 3rd Street, 4th Street.
And a
2nd
lot of
Street.
these cross sections were based off of kind of the existing built environment, taking into consideration where trees were located, where overhead lines were, and where buildings were located, and any sort of physical structures.
So we've got 4 lanes with a turn lane. I guess you call that 5 lanes at 10th Street, but it ends right after the elementaries, right after Pace
Yeah.
High School.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would extend that down to 5th.
Yeah. And so Pecan is separated into 4 different sections based off of kind of the context at which we, one, have right of way, but also just the built environment too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And the way that those 4 lanes taper down now to 2 lanes, that would continue to be the case.
Let me ask this because we've got that center two-way left turn lane. I think I refer to it as the chicken lane, right? Is there a reason we would use that and not create a median there and have specific turn structures at the intersections?
With some of the driveway frequencies on the north side of Pecan, a boulevard would probably be problematic with today's existing conditions, as well as having a dedicated left turn to get onto 10th Street.
Pace and the Rock Gym particularly would make that difficult.
Well, the little strip mall.
Yeah, the strip mall right before that, wouldn't lend itself to that. Okay.
Alrighty. So Pecan Street Section 2 extends from 5th Street to Railroad. We do have a narrow 60-foot right-of-way. This is showing the existing condition. You have very narrow sidewalks up against Pecan Street. Here's another great photo on the left showing that really constrained right-of-way. Those buildings are actually built up to edge of right-of-way. So we only have 60 feet to work with. Other existing conditions you might see are very wide driveways, like here in front of the Shell gas station. So it's not conducive to pedestrian activity. So we do, again, have two sections we're showing for Pecan Street, Section 2. Both of those have 11-foot travel lanes with a 12-foot chicken lane. The preferred section actually has an 80-foot right-of-way. This allows for those 10-foot wide shared use paths that we saw in the previous section to be parallel to the traffic, but have that 4-foot distance between the curb, the shared use path. That's a TxDOT design requirement. And then we would have 7 feet for shade trees between the shared use path and adjacent property lines. For the alternative B, that's where we're saying we have constrained right-of-way. If right-of-way acquisition is not possible, we have 9.5-foot wide shared use paths that are directly adjacent to property lines. And then there would be a barrier between that shared use path and any vehicle lanes. So it's not preferred, but if we continue to see constrained condition, that would be the requirement.
Can you go back a picture? All right, so explain to me how we're working on this area right here where we're going to put a pathway plus trees in diagram A for the preferred.
That's somehow acquiring an additional 20 feet of width.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know where you're going to get 20 feet from.
Yeah, I think we explained it a little bit on the further slides where each option, each alternative cross-section is probably more feasible in certain areas along this section. So the one where you have buildings kind of constrained, there's the older buildings up against the right-of-way, that's where we would be dealing with option B where we're constrained.
So a combination.
Can they work together?
And that was one of the reasons why we set up the cross sections that way, where the trees are on the outside. We're dealing with existing mature trees along the west side of that section. Then whenever you get toward Railroad, that's when you are going to probably likely be seeing alternative B in that constrained environment. And he has some maps that show that area.
So I'm not 100% sure, but I thought in the 10th to 5th Street section, we saw 1 foot curb and gutters, and now I'm seeing 1.5 foot, I'm seeing 2 foot. Just a standard size gutter would work, or why are we, and use that space for something else? I don't understand that.
Yeah, so the section on the left, alternative A, it does have a standard 2-foot curb and gutter. The alternative B has a combined curb and gutter with a small wall. It's a physical barrier between traffic and pedestrians and cyclists. So that can be combined. That 6 inches that you would typically see for the top of your curb in a 2-foot curb and gutter would become part of that concrete or physical barrier.
Okay.
And then you do, TxDOT does require a shy buffer between that barrier and parallel pedestrian and cyclist travel.
Thank you.
So here is where, that preferred section is a potential for that 80-foot right-of-way. So that's between 5th Street and 2nd Street. And then if we continue to see constrained right-of-way, the 60-foot wide section from 2nd to Railroad. Moving on, we did do some 3D illustrations to help kind of illustrate what the plan is proposing. So here we have Pecan Street at Railroad, so existing left and proposed on right. You can see that we have some treatment for the intersection pavement,
Is the Shell station, is that a corporate location, or who operates the Shell there? Well, if you don't know, that's fine.
Do we know if it's franchised?
Yeah.
Sure.
And where I'm going with my question is, maybe there's some incentive to help them redesign that particular footprint there, because it's horrible no matter how many flowers you put around it.
Yeah.
Great point.
One of our downtown action plans years ago showed this intersection, and the cobblestones, it had a big logoed P, and, you know, see, we've reverted to a plain circle here. Is there some artistic elements that we're looking at adding to that intersection?
And that's something that we can explore. I think we kind of stuck with a basic sort of pattern to show before and after, but that's something we can explore.
Thank you.
So in this diagram right here, it's showing all the utilities underground. I remember we discussed this maybe a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. Where do we end up
Was it
on that?
11 million, 20 million? I don't know. It was a lot
So
of money.
are we gonna
I think it was 40 million and we couldn't figure out how there was an ROI.
It was a
Right.
lot of money.
Than that.
So we're still gonna more than likely have utilities.
Any sort of improvements should be, from this plan should be provided in conjunction with those utility improvements.
Okay.
So if we're ripping up the streets, we might as well put them underground. But if we're not going that far, then we can't make the ROI.
That's a
Correct.
convincing argument to me.
We'll get a little bit more into that at the end. Here's that same intersection just from a different perspective. So section
Can you go
3.
back one slide? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
So that would be, again, we've got above ground utilities and utility boxes there. And then the proposal would be to somehow underground or relocate those. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
So I don't see the proposed no trucks right turn sign there, because I know we've got 53-foot trucks that habitually make a right turn on the railroad, and I don't know, once a month, once every other month, sideswipe that traffic light pole there and rip the pedestrian crosswalk button off the side. I'm sure we have some statistics on that. But I don't know how to prevent that, or if we can.
Need to talk to our Amazon friends.
We do
I think we have talked with them.
regularly.
Oh, maybe they're not our friends.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't look like there's any cross-section improvements on the turning radius there.
No,
No.
it doesn't.
No. I don't know if there's any room for turning radius improvements at that intersection.
Potentially, yeah. Of course, relocation of traffic lights,
Fire hydrant,
fire hydrants,
maybe
yeah.
a little bit of parking lot.
It's less of a pedestrian-friendly environment. I would suggest a roll curb or something like that.
See, and from the perspective of small businessmen, I would want to maintain as many parking spots as possible downtown and keep the trucks from turning right, as opposed to accommodating the 53-foot truck in a pedestrian area. I don't know, that's just me thinking out loud.
So is that a TxDOT jurisdiction or a city jurisdiction? It's
It's going to be TxDOT.
TxDOT. Well, so much for that.
And I'm curious, I mean, the easiest way to prevent trucks from turning down that street is to give them a better option. Why are they going down Railroad? Why aren't they going down 685?
I don't know why they're not making the turn and going. I have seen some trucks, some will go north on 685 and cut across on Pflugerville Parkway, because that's all they're using railroad for. I couldn't tell you why they're going down here unless they've got a GPS, and the GPS is telling them all to go this way for, because then they don't have to make a left at the light, but they still have to make the
They
left
still
at
have
the
to
light
make
at
a left.
Pflugerville Parkway. I don't know. I don't know.
One fewer stoplight. The
There's more-
longer traffic backup.
Yeah, I don't know. 685 is more congested, I don't know.
No.
But they definitely continue to go that way, even though I know we've asked them not to.
Yeah, maybe it's 100 feet further north if you're, maybe go up to Pflugerville Parkway at 685 instead of cutting down Railroad. I can see the algorithm telling you, oh, it's so much more efficient.
Well, you
This way.
skip the light at Old Austin Huddle Road, you skip the light at Fennig.
Right.
No, you still got the light offending.
Well, you got a Finnick light
Oh, you do,
either
you're
way.
right.
Yeah,
You just
you
skip- you're right. You
missed
just
one
skipped the
light.
one. I
And
don't
you
know.
should have a higher speed limit on 685.
Next time I see a driver hung up on a pole, I'll ask him, hey,
Yeah.
why'd you come this way?
Maybe he was stopping for tacos. You never know.
Supporting a local
Who's going to
business.
hush puppy heaven?
Okay, next.
All right, so Pecan Section 3, that's going from Railroad Avenue to Robbins. We do see a varying right-of-way again here. It's from 50 to 80 feet in width. Here's an image showing we've got 4-foot sidewalks on back of curb, both sides. So the proposed section, you're going to see those 10-foot shared use paths. You're going to see street trees, and you're going to see additional right-of-way to maintain a full 80 feet along Pecan Street. So I wanted to point out, right, you'll notice that the shared use path on the south side of Pecan Street is directly next to Pecan Street, whereas on the north side of Pecan Street, it is there's trees between it and the roadway. The reason why we have it that way is while it's preferred to have the shared use path separated from vehicular roadway, there are large existing trees that are adjacent to businesses on this section of Pecan Street. So we wanted to accommodate those existing trees.
And this is a great slide illustrating one of those transitions from the different cross sections.
Now, although we do have the shared use path that is directly adjacent to the through lane, so on the right side of this image, that's the south side of Pecan Street, we do follow TxDOT criteria in having a buffer between that shared use path and the through lane.
Could you do me a favor and go back one slide again? And the reason I ask is this says existing 50 to 80 foot right of way. Where's the 50 foot right of way?
The 50 foot is the driveway that goes to El Rincon. That little bump there makes it 50.
It's also at MoCan.
Oh, okay. So I see right there at Wren, the dotted line pushes up further. Okay. So on the other side of Railroad, though, it's 60 foot. So it's actually skinnier right there, going through Mocha. Can we get some?
That's the fire
Can we get a few feet from Mocan?
They're never going to notice it's gone.
I mean, yeah, they never even know.
Better ask for forgiveness.
But no, I feel like for a road project, I mean that's what it's for. Because if we got if I'm not mistaken, that's Mocan right north of where it says Pecan Street. So if we were able to get a little more space there, we'd get some more right away through the 50-foot section. It would no longer be a 50-foot section.
Well, and the section immediately to the right we own, so I'm sure we could give that to ourselves, and so the last piece we can negotiate.
Yeah, just widen it up a little bit. We can knock out that 50-foot section. I don't know, is that already in your plans?
Says additional right-of-way required.
Yes.
There you go.
We can give you authorization.
So ideally, at the bottom of this image, you'll see we've got 80 foot of right of way now. But yeah, this would support the proposed condition. We do have shared use paths again on both sides of the street. On the north side of Pecan, or the left side of this image, that shared use path is directly adjacent to the property line. And finally, for Pecan, we're looking at section 4, and that goes from Robin Street to the bridge over Gilliland Creek. The bridge at Gilliland Creek is where our improvements would stop, and any improvements to the FM 685 Dessau intersection would begin. We do have approximately 100 foot of right-of-way to work with, so yay, no right-of-way acquisition for this piece. We do have, again, those shared use paths 10 feet wide on both sides of the roadway. They are now distanced between the adjacent parcels, and there's now landscaping between those shared use paths and the adjacent property lines.
So let me ask on this one, over west of 5th Street, we've got 4 through lanes on 120 feet of right-of-way, right? So we're at 100 feet of right-of-way here. Is there a way to take this back out to 4 through lanes rather than 2 through lanes with the Looks like this has even more landscaping.
I suppose that would be a possibility. Yes, I don't know that TxDOT would argue with more lanes.
Although I feel like we need more lanes in this area, but the transition down to 2 through Pecan, I don't want to cause more issues. So this is me being a layman engineer here, and screwing traffic up. But is it possible? Is it reasonable, or is it off the table?
Yeah, so I think the thought behind this particular, or this last section within Pecan for which this plan includes, is really making sure that the FM 685 intersection improvements, or the study, would actually dictate what that design might look like. So it might be a situation where the intersection improvements need to happen further west as previously anticipated within this section. And so if that study recommends additional lanes, then that's where that study would come into place, or come into.
Okay. And then that would potentially deconstruct the displaced left that's currently there at that intersection.
The intersection improvements
Right, those
for the
intersection
685 study accounted for a different intersection design.
I think the 685 study we saw showed an overpass there,
Oh, that's right.
potentially.
We got a lot of potential.
Yes, sir.
So one thing that you'll also see this plan recommends is that pedestrian hybrid beacons, which is flashing lights to indicate to vehicles that pedestrians may safely cross there, these could be included along Pecan Street through all sections, but primarily in Section 2, where there's neighborhoods that may want to be reaching downtown Pflugerville.
What's the spacing distance between a pedestrian beacon and a signalized intersection?
So there is not a specific criteria on this, but they would need to be approved and permitted by TxDOT. Yeah.
Why did I think that this was already off system? Even Pecan through the middle of downtown is still on TxDOT system?
I thought for some reason they gave it to us when we got over 50,000.
Well, we
traffic
can
control.
take it as well if we want to do the maintenance, and I
Right.
mean, that cross section is not a whole of a lot of maintenance.
Well, if we're going to rebuild it, then I don't know.
I feel like we don't control our own destiny. I've talked to people for years about putting pedestrian crosses across Pecan, because no one wants to walk the block and a half or the 3 blocks down to the signalized intersection across the street. So you'll see people playing Frogger out there on busy weekends. So yeah, I want to be able to do that, and if there's an impediment to doing that, let's clear the impediment.
Well, and I think we also looked at adding pedestrian access to the tunnel, or going under the bridge there, but there was some issues acquiring the right of way or the permission to build some ramps there.
If we rebuild it, they will go.
All right, so our second streetscape that we're looking at is for Main Street. This does include a study through the PACE campus for Western expansion that was recommended in previous studies. So we do have residential, commercial, and municipal uses on Main Street. And again, these sections, section 1, 2, and 3, are divided up. Really, instead of based on available right-of-way, because they all have 100 feet of right-of-way, they're divided up based on their adjacent land uses. So for the expansion through the PACE campus, this is just a kind of a bare bones study of creating a consistent environment from Main Street back to Pecan. So we have 12-foot 3 lanes with 10-foot wide shared use paths that are adjacent to back of curb.
Is the ISD bought up on this idea?
Not that I'm aware of.
Concept, just concept.
Yes.
So I remember just before I came on, the year before I came on, y'all were talking, well, council was talking about, or the possibility, somebody brought the proposal of doing it on the other side of Pecan, correct? and extending that out. And I remember at that time, Councilman Marsh had said, and you too, Jim, y'all were questioning whether that road was even capable of holding the amount of traffic that you were talking about. And so I'm kind of questioning whether if we did this, would the road continuing onto Main Street be able to hold that type of traffic? That
Well, part
would
of
be able to
part
accommodate
of that design was when we were looking at the road dieting,
Uh-huh.
and so that these would be two lanes in opposite directions, right? There'd be one direction, and the idea was that when Main Street came down, it would dovetail, and so there'd be where you see that perpendicular cut into Pecan.
Right.
That conceptual design had a radius there where it just kind of flowed into Pecan, because Pecan was only going to the east at that
Right.
point.
But this goes on to diverting traffic onto Main Street. I think y'all were talking about a one-way at
Well,
one
the-
time.
So I did have
Yeah,
this harebrained
different-
idea where we put, segment traffic, go Main Street one direction, Pecan the other, or even Main Street one direction, Hall the other direction, and make Pecan a pedestrian district. Why not? We only have the 60 feet of right of way there. Why not? That didn't go over very well. I don't see anything in here that actually says let's take the traffic off of Pecan. This looks like just an alternative.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know. Are we planning to increase traffic volumes on Pecan with this scenario?
So with this particular scenario, it was included because this particular extension is included within the transportation master plan. If the recommendation is that this is not included within the streetscape master plan, we can remove this item.
That would eventually connect to Main Street, correct?
Yes, the idea.
Will Main Street be able to accommodate that type of traffic? I guess that's right.
So Main Street has twice the right of way as Pecan. Is that right? How much right of way do we have on Pecan?
So
Or excuse me, on Main Street.
100 feet.
Got 100. So
I mean, the road itself. I mean, we'd have to rip up the whole road and redo the whole road, correct, to be able to accommodate that much, the volume of
Additional
traffic.
volume?
Yeah, the volume. Yeah.
well, you didn't say this is going to increase volume. Does this plan increase volume on Main Street?
So that was not studied for volume and
Streetscaping.
yeah,
Not a traffic.
No,
concept, but yeah, it's not a traffic
I
study.
mean, we
or
talked
impact
all
analysis
about
or-
Main Street connecting to
Mhm.
685, and the idea is not for circuity or for alleviating traffic, but for providing access.
Right.
It's a way into downtown. I see this as very much a way into downtown, a way out of downtown, but not a way to cut through and bypass Pecan. I don't know if this becomes a shortcut, and probably not a great idea.
okay.
But we do have. I mean, we're talking about a lot of road construction here.
Mhm.
We got plenty of room on Main Street
Yeah,
to build
my
a
concern was the
better
volume.
road, but
Yeah,
the existing pavement, I don't know what spec it's built to.
And then, like David said, we need a buy-in from the ISD on this one too. So,
Yeah, we do.
will this impact the old brick building?
Yeah.
Rock
Well,
gym.
you go past the rock gym, you go right through the historic football field.
And
So
another
we're going through
version-
an update on our mobility master plan, so we'll incorporate that into the mobility plan. This was specifically for streetscaping, but we can add that.
And another version showed that one block of Fifth Street there, converting it to one way and adding a radius, so you come around and come in and not have to go through the ISD. There's a bunch of different versions baked around that. But all of those were predicated upon the road dieting and having two one-way streets, and this isn't talking about that, so.
Take a drive through historic Boogerville.
Yeah,
See where the mayor played basketball when he was a kid.
exactly.
So Pecan Street Section 1 begins at the Pace Campus and then travels to 3rd Street. Again, we do have that 100-foot right-of-way. This section is entirely residential on both sides of the street. So for the proposed solution here, we are keeping the through lanes as they are, 12 feet wide, but we're adding sharrows, which is indicating that bicycles can now use the pavement. So in the previous section through the Pace Campus, we were showing that there were shared use paths on back of curb. We're now proposing that the cyclists can now move into the pavement within the center of the street. There's going to be 8-foot wide parallel parking on both sides of the street. We're using parallel parking in this because it's in front of residences, so we don't want a bunch of head-in angled parking that's going to increase the quantity of vehicles in front of private residences.
Why?
To be sensitive to the residences and their desires that they brought up to us through stakeholder meetings. We didn't want to, increase the quantity of vehicles that could be parked in front of those homes.
What's the building setback on Main Street?
25?
So it's going to be based off of use, but generally in these residential areas, it takes the basic residential. It's 20-25 feet in that area.
I guess I'm wondering why we need an 18-foot landscape buffer between the sidewalk and then an additional 25-foot setback to the structure. That seems like a lot of space. And as much as I love landscaping, I'm just trying to understand, is that the appropriate place to put it? Because we're going to have yards right there. I mean, most residential, the sidewalk is a foot and a half from the official property line in the right of way. So 18 feet seems like a lot.
With the so this was being sensitive to mostly the existing condition. I'll go back. So there are no existing sidewalks. There is it's I guess 32 feet of pavement here. So it would appear that we're taking a lot of right of way when in reality
A lot of people's driveways that aren't really their driveways.
Correct.
And so this particular section is really considered more optional, especially if it is an extension through Pace. If not, it could be potentially designed similar to the other residential streets, where the appearance, even though we have 100 feet of right-of-way, it's likely perceived as their front yard. And we could adopt or we could modify that.
I would think the 18-foot landscape sections on both sides is kind of, that's what was left over from what the needed street section was.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, let's make extra large landscape here. We have 100 foot and we don't need 40 of it.
Yeah, but I could also, in that space, add a dedicated bike lane.
But it'd be a
dedicated
3-block dedicated bike lane, And so now you got people coming in and then coming back off, merging in traffic. I don't know. Yes, that's an idea. I like the idea of having the more parking, but
Head-in parking.
yeah,
Yeah. Perpendicular as opposed to parallel.
or the angled,
whatever.
whatever that's called.
Yeah, perpendiculars.
Yeah.
A little difficult in that area.
The next picture.
Proven.
Your next picture will show it like
The
that.
proven safer way to do it
Like-
is to reverse the angles
Yeah.
of your lines there, so that you have to back into each spot.
We did ask the public specifically on those, and that was the least favored.
I know, but it's the safest.
It's the safest,
Yeah.
right? And so,
On a slow street, it's fine, but I hate doing it by UT. Oh, I hate doing that. And downtown Austin, yeah, hate it.
So would you prefer that the residential portion of Main Street be designed similar to the other residential streets within downtown? Just
I'm
similar
not
to what
sure
you'd
why
find?
to Doug's point, we've got plenty of space there with those landscape buffers. I'm not sure why we wouldn't take advantage of adding more parking inventory. It's not like there's gonna be fewer cars, right? And so I understand there'll be more cars parked there, but right now they're going down to the next block and the next block or the next block. And now you got people parking further out into the neighborhoods walking in. By not having additional parking there, we're not gonna limit the number of cars that are looking for parking spaces downtown. What will limit that is advertising a parking lot over in downtown east with a pedicab or a
Or Fetch-A-Ride.
Fetch-A-Ride or
Or
whatever, right? That's what's gonna eliminate people parking in the residential neighborhood,
Yeah.
is giving them an option.
Gondola.
I mean, if they had like a little train, they could take over.
That'd be amazing, right? What does our downtown action plan and our future use look like for this residential area? Does it anticipate this continuing to be residential in perpetuity?
So we do have some language within the downtown streetscape master plan that provides some variables for if this area were to transition to commercial uses, it would have to adopt the commercial standard with additional angled parking. So if any of these residential uses were to flip, they would have to provide that parking before they can open the establishment.
I mean, 18-foot will be enough space for a small gauge train. Just saying.
In the
HO gauge.
in the downtown parking study that we conducted back in 2019, there was a desire that we be very mindful of any of the on-street parking design near residential uses, and that parallel was the desired design form for that parking in order to maintain the character of the area.
So I just want to make sure we understand that the cross section transitions as the use transitions,
Correct.
and my expectation would be that this use transitions
Correct. And
in the near term.
yeah. And Aaron will talk about it a little bit later, but in the Unified Development Code, it outlines what that process is for conversion to residential to commercial.
So for Main Street, Section 2, which is from 1st to 3rd Streets, again, that 100-foot right-of-way, we do have existing head and angled parking. We're seeing office uses here, including some municipal uses. So the proposed condition here is maintaining that head and angled parking, but providing for those 10-foot wide sidewalks on either side of the section. Again, there's those sharrows in the center lanes to allow bicycle traffic. And then we do have on the south side of Main Street a 15-foot wide landscape buffer, which would accommodate shade trees. Because of the head and angled parking, we had less right-of-way to work with. So we do know that we wanted shade trees, and they would provide the best benefit on the south side of the section. We did do a quick study of what the offices here that are the municipal offices could look like with that condition in front of it on Main Street, and then also what that property could potentially look like. So here's a quick image from the southeast corner looking northwest. And it really you can't see a whole lot right here, so we're going to zoom in a little bit and get a little bit closer. So we do have that 10-foot wide sidewalk up against the head and angle parking, and then we have a little lobby area in front of the municipal offices. The plaza. For Main Street, Section 3, it's one block. We're looking at First Street to Railroad, continuing that 100-foot right-of-way. This block is unique. It does have a dense cluster of commercial uses. We do have that existing pedestrian crossing. It's also used for special events, Rock the Block and Slice of Pflugerville. So this section does need to take into account the uses that are probably going to continue occurring here. So what that section looks like is you're continuing to see those sidewalks, but they're a little bit wider now. We had 11.5 feet to work with. We do have the head-in angled parking. And then these through lanes are really wide now, and that's to allow for the loading and unloading of service vehicles. In the event that future redevelopment allows for those service vehicles to access those businesses in another location, then these lanes could narrow or alternative solutions could be considered. So here's a quick illustration of the existing intersection and then the proposed. got street trees and landscaping, pavement enhancements, lighting. And then here's another view of the same intersection. You can see in the image on the right that Main Street is now continuing east, which is being handled by a separate study.
Doesn't show the new trash can on the corner there.
Where do you say?
Oh, man.
I know,
Sorry.
right? I love those trash
I'll
cans.
draw that in.
If y'all haven't seen them, they've got panoramic shots of the city all around four sides of our
They are
trash
nice.
receptacle. They're gorgeous.
All right, we're also looking at railroad. So this is dividing us 3 sections. That's based on available right-of-way and then also adjacent land uses. It's the primary north-south collector. It is parallel to MOCAN for part of the way. And then it is classified as a minor collector with 60 feet of right-of-way. So section 1 goes from Gilliland Creek to Main Street. Our right-of-way here is actually 55 to 80 feet in width, and our proposed solution has at least a minimum of 60 feet required. However, if additional right-of-way could be acquired, that would be greatly preferred to provide for street trees on both sides of the section. We do have those 10-foot wide shared use paths on back of curb.
Pedestrian walking?
Pedestrians and cyclists
Where?
on these shared use paths, those 10-foot wide.
But
shared
where's it at? I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Oh, before the landscaping. All right.
Oh, yes.
I'm thinking it's after landscaping. All right.
Gotcha.
All right. Sorry.
And then here's a quick illustration of what you might see when entering the district from the north. You're crossing the bridge on Gilliland Creek. It could be a nice gateway welcoming you to the downtown district.
Looks like Round Rock.
Especially during parades, it gives people a place to stand. During parades, a safe place to stand.
Hey, Jim, we make that sign a little lower, it'll keep those 53-foot trucks.
Now you're thinking, sir. Now you're thinking.
I don't know.
Why
Don't
do you
hey,
encourage such things?
Well, you missed the earlier conversation.
You missed
It's
the whole
gotta be
diatribe.
big enough for the
Don't let one nonprofit on there. They've already knocked down power lines.
big pickup trucks though, so you gotta get it in between.
Really.
Too low for the semis, but just big enough for the,
Yeah.
the good old boys.
So we've made it to section 2. So we've got our 10-foot wide shared use paths that get us down to Main Street, and then from Main Street to Pecan Street, we still have 10-foot wide sidewalks parallel to back of curb. But we have this is the first time you're seeing this now, is what we call a trees and furnishing zone. So this area can be paved, it can have street trees, it can have benches, trash receptacles, all those types of furnishings, streetscape furnishings.
Right. So, but as Doug pointed out earlier, it looks real pretty in the drawing over here, but we're reminded in the drawing on the right, or the picture on the right, that we've got overhead lines, and so you're not going to be able to plant your trees there
They're going
without.
to be very short trees.
Without utilities
They're
being
going
underground.
to be
By
something. Or there'd be V trees, right? There'll be something.
Yeah, so the recommendation within the streetscape master plan is that any of the streetscaping, especially with trees, be in conjunction with the undergrounding, because it's really impossible to plant trees under overhead lines and
Yeah,
have
and
them
that
actually
tells
look
you
good
when
long
you're
term.
If it's with the underground, and we've looked into that before, and we know how substantial that is. Yeah,
Correct.
You already made the motion. Yes, you did. Yes, to go with that.
It's the most substantial cost
Absolutely.
as part of the streetscaping.
At the same time, I also think that it makes a demonstrative difference. But I get it.
But Doug made the argument that if we're already tearing up the road, we're halfway there.
You know what I argued about Weiss Lane? Remember when Encore came here and begged y'all for this, and I said no, we need to push them for that. And y'all were like, oh well, they need it. They really need it right now. It took them a year. What was it? A year later? Yeah.
Emergency-
Yeah. And they're like, oh,
emergency requirement.
yeah, we were never gonna have electricity.
World's gonna burn
up
down.
there. So you know my opinion on that.
So with the undergrounding of the utilities, you see the utilities on the left, on the right, they're underground, and we can have nice shade trees and great landscaping.
Right.
And then, so here's another quick illustration as you're headed towards the Shell station, showing that wider pedestrian condition with the sidewalk or the
Oh, so we're
Furnishing
removing
zone.
parking.
So the wider sidewalks create more patriotism also?
Yes, that's a direct correlation.
So here's a
More
potential.
civic pride.
More
There you
flags,
go.
there you go, yeah.
A potential for improving that pedestrian environment, getting rid of that driveway and the parking stalls that are a conflict to
Are
pedestrians.
those public parking stalls?
U.S. flags.
No, they're
They're
private.
Those are private.
I just noticed that.
Oh, I know, but you know how they got to paint this.
Good looking alley, I'm telling you that.
I think they'd be okay with that.
Looks nice.
What do you-
And then finally, section 3 on Railroad. We do have those 10-foot wide sidewalks on back of curb. And then we do have on the west side of Railroad a loading area to service the businesses along Pecan, on the south side of Pecan, between Railroad and First. All right, so we do address alleys in the plan because they're all functional. They do provide parking. They do businesses utilize them for trash disposal. There is the opportunity to enhance those, provide additional parking, improved parking, but also enhance them with murals and accent lighting and making it a pedestrian-friendly space that businesses could, create a symbiotic relationship with. So these cross sections are just showing really quickly. We have 20-foot alleys. There's the potential for head-in parking, perpendicular parking, possibly on both sides, depending on the land use and the structures.
Is there, I guess, where is there the opportunity to expand the right-of-way in alleys?
So in all of the alleys throughout downtown Pflugerville, however, you might not want head-in parking behind everyone's homes. So really specifically between Pecan and Main Street is really where this is the biggest potential.
Is there any potential of abandoning the alleys? Turning it over to the private businesses there so that we could then get more right of way on maybe the other side? I don't know if any of that would be reconstructed in the near term, but I feel like the alleys are not particularly helpful.
We're exploring that now.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
And then finally, we also have context-sensitive streets. And so what context-sensitive streets are is that we realize there are a lot of different land uses in downtown Pflugerville. On certain blocks, you may have commercial on one side and residential on the other. You may have commercial establishments next door to residences. And it's just quite a mixture. So we've mapped out, where these streets have the same uses on each side versus differing uses. And what these look like is that you're going to have one condition if it's residential. You're going to have another condition if it's commercial. So in this scenario, it's residential on both sides. So you see a very typical residential section that is following the transportation master plan. 6-foot sidewalks, 8-foot parking, 12-foot through lanes. If, for example, there were commercial development on one side of the street, opposite residential, you would then have that head-in angled parking. There would then be the 5-foot landscape buffer and 15-foot sidewalk that would be adjacent to that commercial development. There is the potential that existing structures may constrain that. So you may see that it's only a 6-foot sidewalk between the head-in angled parking and the adjacent structure. So that is permissible. Here's an example where you see commercial on both sides of the street. So in these cases, we do propose that it is head-in angle on both sides of the street, as well as that preferred condition of a 5-foot landscape buffer and then a 10-foot sidewalk. Again, though, if both sides of the street there were structures that limited that, we may just have 6-foot sidewalks between the parking and the structures.
So relevant to that street, though, you have commercial on both sides, but you just go a couple steps further and you got residential.
And then it would need to convert.
So what would you bifurcate specific on that area, and you have a unique pattern made specifically for that, or do you alternate the pattern since you've got commercial both sides here, then all of a sudden you'll see a different pattern given that residential's on that side.
So where you'll see those breaks would be, on that example, we were looking up First Street, I believe. So an appropriate break would probably be the alley, where you wouldn't just switch it right in front of one residence and then go back and forth. There would have to be, cost savings accounted for, but that would be. And finally, we do have all of these costs put together for the different sections. We are, I wanted to point out that we have an asterisk next to the Main Street extension through the Pace campus. These costs do not include right-of-way acquisition. These costs also do not include the undergrounding of utilities.
I love how you, they're cost, but they don't cost all the big ticket items that go with it. Okay, fair.
These are the improvements that we're proposing.
Do we have an estimate on right away?
We do not.
Okay.
That seems like a big missing piece.
So yeah, I was just, for my own edification, was that just not in the scope of the project?
Correct.
Okay.
Just seeing what you want.
Because of preponderance of his ISD.
Fair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions, council? I think we've asked some already.
Same thing for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very.
I think it could be, potentially, you'd mentioned that we are exploring the ability
Alleys.
to abandon some of those alleys. Maybe we can do some right-of-way exchanges.
I very much appreciate your attention to detail and outlining the different context of the streetscapes as they reside within different types of zoning areas. I think that's important in considering how these things are going to flow. I like the one aerial view of East Pecan, east of Railroad, that showed a transition between two of the different streetscapes. I think being able to demonstrate what those transitions are going to look like will be helpful. I know you said, well, at a street or an alley, we may just change it, but you don't want to go from it needs to be, there needs to be some consistency there, because here you may be going from a 10-foot sidewalk to a 6-foot sidewalk, but that 6-foot sidewalk may be offset, right, because of the whatever. And so just making sure that you pay attention to where those transitions are and what they're actually going to look like, I think is important. Of course, that would come from the engineering plan, I'm sure.
And I'll just make a comment about it, because I've heard this over the years, much like council has heard this over the years, with our new Downtown East initiative and pulling that down to the Old Town, if you will, on Main Street. I think a priority is almost imperative on Main Street as well as Pecan Street, because what happens, because we hear it all the time, is the businesses on the south side of Pecan Street get impacted by what's going on the north side. And it just makes it difficult, I would think, for, other than the saloons maybe, for new business initiatives to develop on the south side, given that we don't have that safety crossover, the intersections that we talked about, and some type of features to get that traffic, or get the pedestrian traffic to move from the south side to the west side, which is the new downtown. And so I think that's going to be important, how we approach that.
We just had a family dinner over there, and they were remarking, my in-laws, that for 30 years we've been talking about what's going to happen in downtown. Like, when they moved here, this is what's going to change. I mean, this is like 1990. Hey, we're going to do this. Hey, 2000, we're going to do this. 2010, we're going to do this. I give this council a lot of credit with the Downtown East project and us moving and pushing forward with it. I additionally give it credit for having a vision and putting in ideas regarding what we're doing here for that. One of my fondest memories of being on this council did not happen in the Styes. It was literally when, I don't even know why we were there, but Jim, Doug, and I spent like 2 hours walking around downtown Round Rock and just looking at things. And, it was one night, I don't know why. And we just hung out just looking at how things are done. And we saw that some of the areas, hey, listen, they hadn't changed from residential to commercial, but you saw where they were going with things. We were like, oh, then this looks great right here. The idea has always been like, why can't we recreate that here? I mean, because we've heard the efforts that Round Rock went to make that happen, and we'd like to see that here. I love this, and I like the momentum with this. I just, I'm hopeful that this leads to real change and real work on that as well. We put Downtown East there specifically because we didn't want to leave away. We could have put it by the lake, we could have put it all different places, but we were like, we wanted to make sure that that area of town, we didn't have two Austins two Pflugervilles like two Austins. I'm hopeful this leads to something more fruitful, that we actually do make some demonstrable difference over there as well. I love the vision idea. I know we have to be practical around the cost benefit analysis on these things, but hopefully this takes us to something at new heights over there for this, folks.
One more thing to consider, if we do decide to go with the road around the Rock Gym, maybe consider having that road also connect to City Park Road. That way residents will have a easier access or faster access to our park downtown, and not have to go through residential and everything else. I'm looking at the map right here, and I see that City Park Road is just right there, so,
We may even have the right of way for that, I don't know.
yeah.
So one thing that we like to do is start, of course, we always do planning. That's what we do as a city. I think this would be a nice conversation, maybe in a period of time, to look at a bond committee for our next transportation and quality of life bond package. To be real frank, the only way that you're going to be able to do this is through some sort of bond funds.
Does staff envision that this package wraps around the undergrounding package? That they go hand in hand?
Boy,
Yes.
I would hope so. If we're going to swing for the fence, you go for home run.
So that 23 million isn't 23 million.
Oh, we know.
Yeah,
Hey,
just-
I mean, if we're
caught it at the end.
we're gonna show pretty pictures of trees, we need to give them clear skies.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
like
much.
that.
Thank you.
Good line.
Council, our next 3 or 4 items are executive session. 2B is deliberation regarding real property pursuant to Chapter 551.072 of the Texas Government Code regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, and/or value of real property related to the real estate proposal for Downtown East. 2C is seeking legal counsel pursuant to 551.071 of the Texas Government Code for discussion regarding lawsuit filed by 15508 Impact Way against the city and Pflugerville Community Development Corporation. 2D is discuss personnel matters pursuant to Chapter 551.074 of the Texas Government Code regarding appointment and duties of the Associate Municipal Judge. And 2E is executive session discussion of personnel matters pursuant to Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code regarding performance evaluation of the city manager. We are in executive session.
My feet hurt.
Oh, I was like, where's your chucks?
My feet hurt today for those.
I can't believe it's payday.
We are back from executive session. No action was taken. Having no further items on the agenda, we are adjourned, and we will adjourn again
Or is it?
or convene again in 4 minutes.